Hey guys, TrueGreen7 here, and recently I've been baffled by the idea that I have forgotten the existence of a few Pokemon in the past. I'm sure it's a normal occasion for any Pokemon fan. You know, a bunch of Pokemon don't make as big impressions as Charizard and Pikachu. But the difference between you and me is that part of my job here is to look at a list of every Pokemon all the time, so I barely forget any Pokemon. I'm not saying that I'm better than you, in fact, quite the opposite. I have no life. But it's interesting to look at the Pokemon that never fully stayed in my mind. The purpose of this video is to talk about the Pokemon whose identities are always fleeting, and to maybe even discuss how we can change them up a bit to make them more memorable. In the process of making this video, I'll finally remember these Pokemon forever. Keep in mind that I don't hate any of these Pokemon, they're just not on par with my favorites. Also, some of these Pokemon are ones that I used to constantly forget, but don't anymore, on account of the fact that my YouTube career revolves around Pokemon. I don't genuinely overlook these Pokemon, but if you were to ask me to name every single Pokemon by heart, I'd definitely forget to mention them. But do remember that I've been making Pokemon-related videos for 3 years now, so the Pokemon that you may have forgotten about, like Burmy, could totally be in my mind every day, especially since I made a shirt that you can find in the description. Okay, I'm gonna be jumping around the Pokedex in this video, so let's start with Cleffa and Igglybuff. It's not that I don't know of them or even care about them, because I do. Cleffa and Igglybuff are super cute. The day Cleffa stops being cute is the day I've given up on humanity. But if someone has to ask me about the Clefairy family, I'd be like, yeah, Clefairy's an interesting Pokemon, and Clefable is surprisingly strong. And they'd be like, and I'd be like, and what? And they'd be like, what about Cleffa? And I'd be like, oh yeah, I totally forgot that Cleffa's a thing. That's the problem. I have no opinion on these Pokemon other than their appearance. I don't remember ever battling a Cleffa or Igglybuff, and I definitely never trained one. The problem is that a lot of baby Pokemon are, what I hate to say, gimmicks. I personally have no problem with gimmicky Pokemon. Elekid and Magby are super cool, and I've actually had them. Unless I'm missing something crucial, I've never found a reason to care about these two. But let me tell ya, I will forever remember about these Pokemon now that I've talked about them in a video. In fact, there are tons of examples of Pokemon who I used to constantly forget about, but ended up always remembering how I mentioned them in an official TrueGreen7 video. It must be an honor for them. They don't need to get paid. They get enough exposure for my videos. One example is Behem, one of the most forgettable Pokemon in existence. The mystery surrounding this alien Pokemon doesn't help either, but years ago I made a video about which Pokemon I loved more than their evolved forms, and in the process, noticed how cute Elgyem is. I love the concept of a tiny green alien Pokemon, but I think the reason people forget it is the lack of expression on its face. How can we grow attached to something we don't understand the feelings of? That's why I think a simple fix would be adding a mouth to this little dude. There you go, now you can eat. But the big problem is Behem. The cuteness of Elgyem won't elevate the status of Behem. If anything, it would make fans hate the fact that a cute Pokemon turned into a bug-eyed monster. That's why I think slightly lowering that Chrome Dome, adding a mighty fine speed stat, and changing the color scheme would help make this Pokemon look more like an FBI agent alien, more popular, and therefore less forgettable. Another expressionless Pokemon I used to forget as a child would be Venomoth. Its notoriety was boosted after Twitch Plays Pokemon, so now I do remember that it exists, but that's only because it's part of a massive Pokemon-related event. I think I barely remember this creature for the fact that it looks like a straight-up moth. At least Butterfree has design choices that deviate from any generic butterfly design. Dustox is super memorable, maybe because it's super colorful and has an appealing expression. So what can we do to fix Venomoth? Of course, making it an even stronger Pokemon would boost any pocket monster's popularity, so I think I'm gonna stop mentioning that fact. I'd say we should add some color variation to this Pokemon, but guess what bright Pokemon is even more forgettable to me? Mothim. He's so unmemorable that I've made numerous videos in which I mentioned Burmy, but never even talked about Mothim. I always think about Wormadam, so you'd think Mothim would pop into my noggin, but I rarely think about this Pokemon so much so that it's kinda nostalgic to me. It's a distant memory, cause I do remember acknowledging Mothim as a child, but I gotta say that if its shiny coloration was its primary color scheme, I'd get 12 of these moths. They look like lightning bugs. But of course, the actual lightning bug Pokemon, Volbeat, isn't actually memorable. Funny how it's also exclusively male, like Mothim. I'm sure a lot of you guys totally forgot about this bug, maybe even Illumise too, although I remember Illumise way more than Volbeat for various reasons. First, I had Ruby and Emerald, in which Volbeat was a 1% chance of being encountered, and second, it has a personality. It's very cute and somewhat pretty. Volbeat, on the other hand, is far from cool. Not in a terrible way, it just looks dopey as hell. It's also one of the very few Pokemon that I think looks out of place, but that's for personal reasons that I can't really convey with words. I just think that if Volbeat was some kind of cool lightning bug or firefly, we'd talk about him all day. Nope, too late. Volcarona and Vikavolt already took this spot. You see, you gotta be fast, Volbeat. Another Hoenn Pokemon I totally forgot about is Barboach. If Game Freak were to somehow eliminate Barboach from the Pokedex, I would never notice. Whiscash is always been there throughout my life. He's a good friend, but I have a feeling that Barboach is the Pokemon I have the least amount of interactions with. Is this even a Pokemon? It's uncanny. It's weird how much this doesn't feel real to me. It's actually very common for people to mistake its lips for a nose. Yeah, that dot is a mouth. So if we were to get some Weepinbell action or even a Wooper smile, I think this Pokemon would be way more memorable. Maybe even make this zigzag light up. I guess that wouldn't be practical since Barboach are known to hide in the mud. It's probably the reason we never see one. But considering the sheer amount of water types, you'd assume that there are a good amount of water types that you'd barely remember, and you'd be correct. Finneon exists. I personally remember the Lumineon line because it's known as the most forgettable Pokemon. That title makes them memorable. Yeah, it's pretty contradictory. Since Lumineon is partially based on fighting fish, a fighting type would help it stand out. Brighter colors would also help, but its current color scheme does help it camouflage in the deep sea floor. It's the Neon Pokemon, yet I've never seen this Pokemon light up. How about giving it the electric type? The Pokedex says that it's already rivals with Lantern, so why not make them equal? They even have the same base stat total, which makes me wonder why Lantern is way more memorable. I guess Lumineon looks too much like a real fish for us to want to train this creature in a fantasy setting. I mean, if I was in a fictional world filled with marvelous creatures, the first Pokemon I choose to encounter definitely wouldn't be a generic fish. Now, Bruxish is far from generic, yet I tried to keep myself far away from Bruxish as well. It's just not an appealing Pokemon. So after it was revealed, I didn't think about it for one bit, because I didn't want one. It wasn't until I made this video that I remembered it was a thing. There's no way to change it, because it looks like what it's based on. While it's not necessary, a less off-putting evolution would have made it stay relevant in my mind. We could give it some dental work. I'm okay with making this fish more attractive. Not totally on board, but it's better than this. There are still more forgettable water-type Pokemon. I didn't even know about Phione as a child. Even as an adult, I don't know why it exists. What is the point of this Pokemon? It's cute, but it's so confusing. Is it a mythical Pokemon? Why doesn't it evolve into Manaphy? All these questions make it less concrete in our minds. It feels like this Pokemon was a mistake, like Game Freak forgot about it or something. If it was just a straight-up pre-evolved form of Manaphy, I think people would totally remember it. Now, Ducklet could have been forgettable if I didn't remember it for having one of the most unoriginal designs in Pokemon. While I'm fine with it now, I never understood why we have a blue duck Pokemon. Psyduck at least has the rubber ducky-like design and psychic powers. Is this supposed to be an ugly duckling? Is that what it's based off? So why isn't it ugly? I looked into its Pokedex entry to see if it does anything unique, but it literally does what ducks do in real life. It's as if it doesn't even have powers. Let's at least make it look like a swan duckling. See, this looks pretty good. The next Pokemon is not even close to generic. I certainly didn't know Dunsparce existed until I was a Pokemon fan for at least 5 years. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But now it's constantly on my mind, especially after watching its following grow online. So let's forget I mentioned him. Or don't do that, cause then he will be on the list. But the Johto Pokemon I forget about the most is Girafarig. I would constantly think about how cool it would be to have a giraffe Pokemon. I was baffled. Where was my giraffe pocket monster? And it turned out it was there all along. I knew about Girafarig, but for some reason I just never associated it with giraffes. Same thing with Donphan. Although Donphan certainly wasn't forgettable, I would constantly forget that it was an elephant, and for a while I demanded an elephant Pokemon. More examples of Pokemon I used to always forget but now constantly remember due to how much I am currently immersed in the franchise are Skiploom, which is the most irrelevant Pokemon to me for some reason, Silcoon and Cascoon, who are just ovals, Wynot because of how popular Wobbuffet is, Cherum because its face is rarely seen, Maractus because the other cacti are much more memorable, Cryogonal because I don't know where its facial features are, Manfu, which is weird because it's not a flawed Pokemon, and Larvesta because Volcarona's existence is overpowering, and you can find a fully evolved one in the games. But the final Pokemon in today's video is Ambipom, whom I forgot for multiple reasons, but the main one is the fact that it reminds me of those snub-nosed monkeys, which are my least favorite mammals. They scare me a lot, and I think Ambipom kinda does too. I constantly forget that Apom isn't a fully evolved Pokemon, and I wish it was. It's not a bad concept for a Pokemon, I just wish its nose didn't scare me. This is fine, but it's less unique now. Bigger eyes make it cuter, but why not make it darker so it's not just an Apom with 2 tails and a terrible haircut? Now how about we give it a better hairline too? And some blue eyes like Apom. There you go. If you were to go back and forth between the old one and the new one, it makes the actual Ambipom look like some kind of monstrosity. But now it's a handsome Pokemon I wouldn't mind remembering. Well, regardless, I'm gonna remember all of these Pokemon now, and I hope you do too. And remember to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Gotcha. Make sure to click the bell to actually get notified when I upload, and you can even follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Check all the links in the description, cause each link leads to a fun place, and I'll see you guys very soon.